please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Captain's log, supplemental. When someone makes it a point to commit fraud, I often have a good chuckle at the level of arrogance they possess, especially when that arrogance is slapped off their face because they finally arrive here. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we welcome inmates number 164 to the ISO cubes. Inmates number 164 is quite a special individual because they took their level of crime and they created so much nonsense with it that they were at one point considered one of the wealthiest self-made female billionaires in the United States. A lofty title, in reality, entirely fictitious. This is where you find that when you look up someone's net worth, their actual worth is usually a lot lower. For the sake of this video, we are going to talk about who Elizabeth Holmes is. We're going to talk about her company, Theranos, the crime she committed, and then the trial. It's an interesting one, because you do have to marvel how somebody can be as corporate America as this and get away with it for so long. And when I say corporate America, what I mean is somebody that can make up so much but actually accomplish very little. Somebody who at one point was considered a trailblazer, an innovator, all of which absolute horse crap. So I guess we should start with, who is Elizabeth Holmes, aka inmates number 164? Elizabeth Holmes was born in 1984 in Washington, D.C. Her father was a vice president at Enron, which is an energy company that went bankrupt after an accounting fraud scandal. I mention this as a form of foreshadowing. Her mother worked as a congressional committee staffer. Her father later held executive positions in government agencies such as the USAID, EPA, and USTDA. She graduated from high school in Houston and later went to university at Stanford. She studied chemical engineering and worked as a student researcher and lab assistant in the School of Engineering. At the end of her freshman year, she worked at the lab at the Genome Institute of Singapore and tested for coronavirus, or severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS-CoV-1. She went on to file her first patent application on a wearable drug delivery patch in 2003. In 2004, she dropped out of Stanford School of Engineering and used her tuition money as seed funding for a consumer healthcare technology company. In 2003, she founded a company, Real Time Cures, in Palo Alto, California, to democratize healthcare. She described her own fear of needles as the motivation and sought to perform blood tests using only small amounts of blood. She went on to pitch the idea to Professor Phyllis Gardner at Stanford. Gardner responded to her, not believing this could work. Several other medical experts told her the same thing. Elizabeth Holmes, though, didn't relent and succeeded in getting her advisor and dean to back her idea. She later went on to rename the company Theranos. Channing Robertson, the dean at the School of Engineering, became the company's first board member and went on to introduce Elizabeth Holmes to venture capitalists. Something about her quite early on that many criticized was that she put on a voice. She intentionally deepened her voice to a lower baritone. She felt that by doing this, many believed it as well, that she would in turn be taken more seriously. Whereas to me, when I saw her do a TED Talk, she sounded like a really crap villain from a movie.
Unless individuals have access to the information they need to do so, the right to protect the health and well-being of every person, of those we love, is a basic human right.
Someone forcing it to sound lower than it actually is, a strain of sorts. Her family claim this is authentic. Others, though, say, no, she sounds like an authentic woman and the voice is a complete fraud. Again, foreshadowing. So with all this valuable information, hopefully you now know a little bit about her. We can now talk about the crimes of Elizabeth Holmes, aka inmates number 164. This part's fun, because this part is quite tragic. It's a long play, let's go with that. To initially fund the firm in 2004, Elizabeth Holmes had raised $6 million. By 2010, she had more than $92 million in venture capital. In 2011, she was introduced to former Secretary of State George Shultz. He then went on to join the Theranos board of directors. Over the next 3 years, she formed what was one of the most illustrious boards in US corporate history. Yay! Until 2013, Theranos was operated under what is called a stealth mode. Stealth mode is where you try and build everything up without alerting your competitors, without using press releases or the internet. The company in 2013 announced a partnership with Walgreens to launch an in-store blood sample collection center. By 2014, media attention had increased when Elizabeth Holmes appeared on the covers of Fortune, Forbes, T, New York Times Style magazine, and Inc. She was then recognized as the world's youngest self-made billionaire female and ranked 110 on the Forbes 400 in 2014. This was based on the valuation of Theranos, which at that point was $9 billion. It had at that point raised $400 million in venture capital. Her name appeared on 18 US patents and 66 foreign patents. In 2015, Elizabeth Holmes established agreements with Cleveland Clinic, Capital Blue Cross, AmeriHealth, Caritas to use Theranos technology. What a cute way of putting this. Via a medical expert tip, the Wall Street Journal initiated a secret investigation of Theranos. Journalist for the Wall Street Journal spoke to an ex-employee, whistleblowers, and obtained company documents. Through her lawyer, David Boies, Elizabeth Holmes tried to stop this from being published. This included legal and financial threats against the Wall Street Journal and the whistleblowers. In October of 2015, despite the legal threats, the Wall Street Journal published the article. This detailed how the Edison device gave inaccurate results and revealed that the company had been using commercially available machines manufactured by other companies for most of its testing. In 2018, the journalist for the Wall Street Journal published a book titled Bad Blood: Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. This detailed the investigation of Theranos. Elizabeth Holmes denied all the claims, calling the Wall Street Journal a tabloid, and promised that the company would publish data on the accuracy of its tests. She went on to appear on CNBC's Mad Money. Jim Cramer had said that the article was pretty brutal, in which Holmes responded, "This is what happens when you work to change things. First they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world." In January of 2016, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the CMS, sent a warning letter to Theranos after an inspection of its California lab uncovered irregularities with the staff proficiency procedures and equipment. The regulators proposed a 2-year ban on Elizabeth Holmes from owning or operating a certified clinical lab after the company had not fixed the problems in March of 2016. On the Today Show, Elizabeth Holmes said that she was devastated we did not catch and fix the issues faster, and that the lab will be rebuilt with help from a new scientific and medical advisory board. Later on that year, she was banned for 2 years from owning, operating, or directing a blood testing service. Theranos appealed the decision to the US Department of Health and Human Services. Walgreens ended its relationship with Theranos, and the FDA ordered the company to cease use of its capillary tube nanotainer device, one of its core inventions. Once the lawsuits started coming in, Theranos, or Elizabeth Holmes more notably, had dozens of law firms on retainer. That's expensive. The state of Arizona had filed a suit against Theranos, alleging the company had sold over 1 million blood tests to Arizonans while concealing or misrepresenting important facts about the tests. Theranos settled the lawsuit by refunding the cost of the test to consumers and paying civil fines and attorney fees totaling $4.6 million. By May of 2017, the shareholders for Theranos, 99% of them anyway, reached an agreement with the company to dismiss all litigation in exchange for shares of preferred stock, as opposed to common stock. Elizabeth Holmes went on to release a portion of her equity to offset any dilution of stock value to non-participating shareholders. The SEC charged Holmes and Ramesh Balwani, the former president of Theranos, with fraud by taking more than $700 million from investors while advertising a false product. Elizabeth Holmes settled that lawsuit. That lawsuit had claimed that the company was falsely claiming its tech was being used by the US Department of Defense in combat situations, and lied when it claimed to have $100 million in revenue stream in 2014. The company only made $100,000 that year. The terms of Holmes' settlement included surrendering voting control of Theranos, returning 19 million shares to the company, a ban on holding an officer or director position in a public company for 10 years, and a $500,000 fine. But we're not done yet, because in June 2018, following an investigation by the US Attorney's Office for the Northern District of California in San Francisco, which lasted 2 years, she was indicted by a federal grand jury, along with Bramesh, on 9 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, with both pleading not guilty. The trial itself began on August the 31st, 2021, which is where we're going next. Holmes was tried in the US District Court for the Northern District of California, with the District Judge Edward Davia presiding. Her retained defense lawyers specialized in white-collar crime defense. Interesting choice. The trial began after a delay of over a year due to COVID and Elizabeth Holmes' pregnancy. For 7 days, Elizabeth Holmes testified in self-defense by claiming, among other things, that she was misled by her staff about the technology, and that her ex-romantic partner, Sonny, who was also facing trial, held influence over her during the romantic relationship, which was ongoing when the alleged criminal acts happened. The evidence outlined Elizabeth Holmes' role in faked demonstrations, falsified validation reports, misleading claims about contracts, and overstated finances at Theranos. Evidence from the trial included text messages, emails, testimony from 24 messages. This showed that Mr. Balwani, Sonny, had been deeply involved in nearly every aspect of Theranos' business and aware of its problems. In the context of how the business was run, Elizabeth Holmes was the face of it, akin to that of, well, Steve Jobs, who she modeled herself on, while Mr. Balwani, Sonny, was doing all the work behind the scenes. On the 3rd of January 2022, Elizabeth Holmes, inmate number 164, was found guilty on 4 counts of defrauding investors, 3 counts of wire fraud, and 1 of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. She was found not guilty on 4 counts of defrauding patients, 3 counts of wire fraud, and 1 of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, with there being a no verdict on 3 counts of wire fraud against investors. On those counts, the judge declared a mistrial. The government, though, soon after agreed to dismiss them because she screwed. With this, we now go to the sentence, and a rather amusing twist. On November the 18th, 2022, Edward Davia sentenced Elizabeth Holmes to 11.25 years in prison and ordered her to surrender by April the 27th, 2023. The sentence included minimal fines, a 3-year supervised release, along with potentially a 15% reduction for good behavior, meaning she will definitely serve 9.5 years with no possibility of parole. The judge also recommended she be incarcerated in Texas at the federal prison camp Bryan, which is a minimum security facility with limited or no perimeter fencing. After her conviction, which, by the way, she's appealing all of this and failed and appealing and failed, she and her partner attempted to flee because they bought one-way plane tickets to Mexico. Now, her legal team say she bought the tickets with the hope that the outcome of the case would be different. New life, new fresh start and all that, and Mexico loves criminals. The judge ruled it was bold and ill-advised, but said they did not attempt to flee. But the judge did, as a precaution, deny her request to remain free on bail while she appeals her conviction. Congratulations! Elizabeth Holmes, at time of recording, is still seeking a new trial and reduced sentence. But at time of recording, she's already in it. Good luck.
Yes, celebrate.